Why self-awareness is not enough. That's the topic of today's Soul Sovereignty podcast with myself, Jessica Falcon, International Soul Embodiment Guide and Relationship Coach, because we're starting off the new year. Ideally, we're creating the new. We're creating space for the new. We're allowing the new to rise from within. And part of the shedding of the old, part of the creation of the new, is having the awareness of what you're letting go of, what you're calling in, and then, of course, beginning to embody and attune to the frequency of the new. And what I often hear is people saying, yeah, I'm aware of that pattern within myself. Yeah, I'm aware I have that belief. Yeah, I'm aware that's a tendency or habit of mine. And then they stop there. And you cannot transform if you stop there. Now, I do transformational work with my clients. I recently led a retreat in Greece, Divine Feminine Power Initiation. We're doing another one in 2026, if that calls to you. And transformation is what people receive when they step into one of my containers. The reason they're able to receive that level of transformation is not only because of the insight and activations and embodiment practices that I offer, but also because they come to me receptive and ready to see what they have not seen before. They come to me receptive and ready to look at the shadow, to look at the ego, to release their attachments to old ways of being. And self-awareness, yeah, I have this scarcity mentality, for example, without then taking the steps on both a practical and spiritual level to shift out of that habit, to shift out of that belief, to shift out of that pattern, leaves you stuck in it. So let's use the scarcity as an example, because it comes up in the collective a lot, in part because we are collectively being asked to shift out of survival mode, out of scarcity mode, into new levels of divine power. And if you know that you have a lot of attachments to scarcity, if you're used to not having enough, if you are or have grown up in a situation in which you didn't have enough. You wake up in the middle of the night worrying about money, worrying about finances, worrying about not enough love, not enough friends, not enough XYZ. Scarcity doesn't have to just apply to money. It can apply to a lot of things. Okay, so you have the fear. Are you looking at it? Are you staring at it? Are you getting curious about it? Are you asking yourself questions about it? Are you looking at what the emotions are underneath the thoughts, or what are the thoughts underneath the emotions? Some people have more ruminating thoughts and they need to get out of them by tapping into the emotions. Some people have stronger emotions and need to tap into the thoughts, right? So you'll know which one is most applicable to you. But every thought is connected to an emotion, and every emotion is connected to a thought. So you have to look at what is the underlying belief here. Is the underlying belief, okay, I don't have enough. The underlying belief is I never did before, blah, 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 blah. You keep going down, you get to the root belief or root experience. You tap into the emotion of that, often fear, often contraction. Then what do? You have to then start to make a decision to change that. Huge number one step. I've seen people never decide. They want to transform, but they've never actually decided, made a decision to do what it takes to transform. So you make the decision. I'm transforming this within myself. I am now attuning to the frequency of abundance. So what are the new thoughts I need to circulate in my head? What are the other thoughts I refuse to feed when they come into my head? What are the emotions I'm now cultivating? Every time I make a purchase, I feel the frequency of having enough rather than fear or contraction. I expand my energy. I expand my frequency. I expand my field, my energetic field, even if I'm doing something that in the past would have contracted me. I'm shifting out of the pattern. Self-awareness is not enough because it doesn't bring you out of the pattern. You have to consciously shift out of the pattern and create a new one that is in alignment with your inner truth, that is in alignment with the desire that you're setting for yourself. So you shift that every single time it comes up. You are aware, sure, you have these scarcity thoughts, but every time they come in your head, are you shifting them into thoughts of abundance? Are you attuning to the frequency of abundance? Are you cultivating the emotion of having enough? If not, you're going to continue to wake up in the middle of the night scared of not having enough. You're going to continue to wake up in the middle of the night feeling feelings of fear and scarcity. Let's take this to something else more practical in terms of relationships. All right, say you're self-aware that you take on the emotions of others. Beautiful awareness, right? Awareness is the first step, but it's the first step of many, 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 many other steps. You have the awareness that you tend to take on the emotions of others. I was literally just teaching about emotional boundaries this morning and the online temple of divine feminine power that I have. If you're interested in that, I'll put the link below. We're doing boundaries this month, and then we're going to be starting womb wisdom and moving into speaking your truth over the next couple of months. So really powerful way to embody deeper levels of your power. When you have this awareness that you take on the emotions of others and then you stop there, it's not going to change. You're going to continue to take on the emotions of others. Your relationships are still going to suffer as a result. You are still going to suffer as a result. You're going to feel overwhelmed. You're going to feel fatigued. You're going to feel frustrated, resentful, bitter, whatever that is that comes up for you. So you have the awareness, and then what do you do with it? You look at the thoughts underneath, the beliefs underneath, the emotions underneath those thoughts. Fear, again, almost always at the root. But until you get to that root fear, there's shame, there's worry, there's concern. There are safety mechanisms that we have in place that are very unconscious. If I don't make this person happy, for example, then I'm not safe. So I will do whatever I have to do unconsciously to take on their emotions and make them happy and be responsible for them until I start to rewire my own nervous system to attune to my internal state and stop letting my nervous system find safety externally. Or I am afraid of making this person upset. And so I take on their emotions and try to make them feel better instead of speaking my truth, instead of honoring my boundaries, because I believe that that's love. So then you have to look at what are the beliefs within you that think love requires sacrifice, that think love requires self-denial, that think love is doing the inner work for other people because deep down, you don't actually believe that they're capable, because deep down, you're seeing them as weak because you're not recognizing the divine within them. When you're in that martyr mode, that self-sacrifice mode, that I will save you mode, even unconsciously, very, very deep in a lot of healers and a lot of spiritual people who identify with being spiritual or even religious, is that there's this unconscious, I will save you, I will help you, I will make you better, my love is enough, right? But the reality is that's not recognizing the love and the power and the divinity within the other person, which lifts their frequency when you hold that vision. Instead, you go down to them and try to pull them up, take the weight on, take the emotion on. And I'm not saying this with judgment. I'm saying this with, if you want to be sovereign, it requires a deep level of accountability. If you want to be sovereign, it requires a deep level of self-responsibility. If you want to be sovereign, it requires a very deep level of self-knowledge and then aligning everything in your life to your soul's truth and releasing all that's not your soul's truth. And your soul aligns and is attuned to the frequency of divine love. So if you're not active from your heart, if you're not acting from divine love, not these false forms of human love, as I call them, then you're not really living your soul truth. You're likely acting from ego and shadow. I recently wrote an article that came out in Brains magazine on why it's dangerous to label your partner a narcissist. And one of the comments that I received today was from a woman who said, without reading the article, was from a woman who said, well, labeling my partner narcissist is what got me out of, and you could tell there's some victim mentality there. Yes, absolutely, because the article talks about why it's actually good to label, and it also talks about why it's dangerous to label your partner narcissist. Absolutely. Having that capacity to see and observe the behavior of another is helpful, which is why the label can be helpful. However, what's not helpful is if it stops there. That self-awareness, that awareness of, oh, this pattern is happening, this dynamic is happening, this person is doing XYZ, that's not enough, because just recognizing that does not pull you out of the behavior that tolerated it, that accepted it, that karmic cord with that person, that karmic pattern within yourself. It does not heal the cord going out to them, seeking safety, worth, value from them, love externally. It doesn't help you source internally. It doesn't shift your emotions out of victimhood into power, true power, divine power. It doesn't do any of that. The label doesn't actually get you to the healed state. If it gets you out of the relationship, amazing, but don't let it stop there. Because you're just going to end up attracting another person or tolerating another relationship, which the same dynamic is happening internally or externally. Believe me, I've experienced that. I got out of one relationship that I could call abusive, and then I ended up a couple of years later in another relationship with somebody who was pretty narcissistic, because I hadn't healed those things within myself yet that were still seeking safety and love externally. Sovereignty is sourcing from within. And that's why it's always important, not in a blaming, self-judging self kind of way, because that's the opposite of self-love, which is the opposite of sovereignty. It's in an accountability way. You can have compassion and accountability simultaneously. Compassion for yourself. These might be very deep karmic patterns or this life patterns. And accountability. If that's not what I choose to experience anymore, if my soul is choosing a different path, a new path, then I have to hold myself accountable to what needs to shift within me to create a new reality. Now, I'm doing a 12 days of transformation. It's free. It's a new 12-day course that walks you through how to do this, that walks you through how to transform from the inside out, how to transform your thoughts and beliefs, how to transform your emotions, how to transform your energy, how to transform your boundaries, your voice, your relationship with your body, how to transform your life force energy, your sexuality, your relationship with power, and then ultimately to be the transformation, to embody the transformation, and you shift the world through that. Because when you shift the collective consciousness, not only your own. I will put the link below if you want to sign up for and really dig into this on a practical level, because that includes the rich resources of podcast episodes, articles, teachings I've given even in a private space. There are 4 embodiment practices that you can listen to several times that are each about 10 to 20 minutes long that shift your energetic state. And then there are other embodiment practices and reflection questions that really shift how you show up on a practical level in your relationships, in your life, at work. Really powerful way to start the new year. So we begin January 11th. It goes until January 22nd. Each day you'll receive that email. If you get this video after the 11th, you can still sign up. It will be an evergreen course on my website, thepathtosovereignty.com. Because the self-awareness that you have generated, you're clearly self-aware and conscious if you're listening to a podcast like this called Soul Sovereignty, is one step. And I want to take you into deeper levels of embodiment, because the embodiment piece is my expertise, and the embodiment piece is how you actually transform your life and how you actually really transform the world, but how you really experience the difference. You move out of the scarcity into abundance internally. You move out of being a victim into being in your power. You move out of silencing yourself into using your voice, because you're putting it into practice and you're shifting what needs to be shifted internally to release that pattern on every level of your being: mental, emotional, energetic, and spiritual. Sometimes this takes years, sometimes this takes minutes. I've seen clients shift in minutes, like boom, because they're ready and they're willing. I'll put the links below, and I wish you a beautiful new year, actually embodying the change that you want to be.